My name is Bryce Carter. I am the Colorado Program Director with Solar United Neighbors. We're a nonprofit that helps people go solar, come together, and fight for their energy rights. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Colorado pay-as-you-save policy that we're advocating for at state legislature. And I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't acknowledge the many partners that have been helping us on this journey, investigating pay-as-you-save and finding a pathway forward to make this successful. The Energy Efficiency Institute actually helped found the idea of pays about 20 years ago or so. And so they've been a great partner in helping make sure that the language we've been developing is up to date and really reflects a lot of lessons learned over these years. The organizations of Clean Energy Works and Liberty Homes are huge pays advocates, and again have been great supporters and partners with us through this journey. The NAACP and Western Colorado Alliance also, we really appreciate our partnerships with them as we continue to have dialogue with many across the state to make sure that this legislation is going to be able to serve all customers. And finally, we also are working with Peak Government Affairs as our consultant as we look at engaging the State House with this policy. So I'll talk for just a couple minutes about Solar United Neighbors, and then we'll dive into the nuts and bolts of pays. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization, and we're a community of people building a new energy system with rooftop solar at the cornerstone. We really love to help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. Since we launched back in 2007, we've helped over 5,300 people go solar, amounting to over $110 million invested across 13 programs in the country. Our Colorado program was launched about 2 years ago. We've been able to run 7 solar co-ops with 2 more pending, as you can see. We are currently open with Westminster and Denver, and we'll be launching in Colorado Springs and Mountain Village in the near future. We've helped over 200 people go solar, sign contracts, and help support $4.5 million be invested into the Colorado economy. This has amounted to 1.4 megawatts of installed solar capacity, and we estimated this has helped create 22 jobs across the state. We're really proud of this growing impact, which includes being able to take off essentially the equivalent of 343 cars off the road every year. Now, I won't go too much into solar, but I did want to just talk about some background of why we as an organization find solar is an important aspect of the energy transition ahead. First, it provides economic security. It helps lower energy bills for families because it's becoming more economical to go solar than ever before. It keeps energy dollars within the community and has a payback, which has even bigger of an impact when combined with energy efficiency and conservation measures, which will also benefit through a pay-as-you-save model. And we'll focus on that in a few minutes. In addition, solar helps reduce climate emissions. So for instance, a 4 kilowatt solar system in Denver can reduce the equivalent energy offset of 11,255 miles driven in a gasoline car that year. There's also great efficiency benefits like reducing need for peak load during high demand, which is able to save the utility and really everybody some money. And finally, it's part of resiliency as we look at solar being a part of an ecosystem. We look at technologies such as storage, electric vehicles, beneficial electrification, and a lot of other demand side management technologies that help keep the lights on, buildings conditioned, and vehicles mobile in case of major supply disruptions. And here in Colorado, we're very familiar with that, going back to the 2013 floods and many other horrific disasters that we continue to see. So this is obviously an important issue that hits home. Since the founding of Solar United Neighbors, we started in Washington, D.C. as literally our founder, Anya Schoolman, a mother and her son and his friend said, let's figure out how we can go solar together to solve the climate crisis. They started organizing door to door and figured out how to do that process through what became known as a solar co-op process, which we run. But they also know that accessibility and equity is important and it is vital to make sure that everyone gets the benefits of solar. So early in those conversations to recent years, we've been able to actually get over $2 million for our Solar for All program in Washington, D.C. to make sure that families in need are able to get solar. And we're going to continue to advocate, and that's a big part of what Pay As You Save is about, to make sure that those that are bearing the unfair share of the cost of energy production, from pollution to energy rates, are the ones that are going to get the benefits first. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So with this background, where are we today in terms of the solar industry? The price of solar has dropped over 73% since 2010. And I see an article every other week where this number starts at a different year and has a dramatic drop to today. And bottom line is, as you can see in this graph, prices are coming down very quickly. and it's making it more accessible than ever. Yet, at a statewide average of about $3 a watt, a 4 kilowatt system is still $12,000 out of pocket before tax credits if they apply to that person. And so, for those who qualify, many owners need to take out a loan or a lease to get that system, which reduces their ability to realize a payback. And then also, there are resource dependent assistant programs that are able to have funding that can allocate to make sure that families are able to access the benefits of solar through subsidized or grants, and also making energy efficiency improvements available. But again, those are resource limited. So as funding is available, they're able to implement them. Regardless, there is still an accessibility gap. As we look at the FICO scores across the United States and in terms of our population, you can see how it changes over time. And you can see there's a lot of people, especially from the under 30 through really 50s, there's a lot of, even the majority of people that are in a subprime status in terms of the FICO scores. And so when you're talking about accessibility to equity, being able to pay on credit or debt to go solar, there's already major limitations in the ability and flexibility for people to realize those savings. What we talk about in terms of that coverage gap, we call it a little bit of a donut hole. There are people that are able to utilize federal funding, whether it's through weatherization programs or like HEAP or other assistance from parallel state, local, and even utility programs. If they qualify, for instance, 200% below the federal poverty level. And then on the other side of it, you have people that are credit worthy, which means that they either have great credit scores and average income or decent credit scores and higher than average income. And then they can access that equity through commercial loans, through banks and credit cards. They are also able to prioritize using their credit for such improvements. Yet a large portion of households fall into, or perhaps we should say fall through, the energy efficiency coverage cap, this donut hole. Their income might exceed the federal poverty level, but have credit scores that don't meet the commercial underwriting criteria. In Michigan, for example, this was 12 to 25% of all households, depending on the county they were in. In addition, then you have households that might not be willing to wait for a wait list for weatherization funding, or for those that might qualify for credit for a loan, but they don't want to take on any additional debt. So as you consider all these things, you can see that it can be a pretty wide coverage gap. And then finally, it's worth acknowledging the challenge that we face. To upgrade all 130 million homes, we were going to need to essentially move forward with upgrading up to 4 million homes a year for 30 years to get to that goal. And as you can see, over time, the funding that has been allocated, even including the Biden-Harris pledge of $15.4 billion for weatherization assistance funds, that'll get us to $2 million, 2 million homes by 2024. But as you can see, there is an enormous gap for being able to achieve this. So finally, that's what pay as you save. This is where the policy comes into play. It helps solve the coverage gap by expanding access to energy improvements, by prioritizing low to moderate income customers, as well as renters. The way PAYS works very simply is that the energy improvements that are made are treated as a utility investment. The investment is tied to the utility meter, not the customer's credit worthiness. And to qualify, specific and proven cost savings must be met to protect the consumer. And this is why it's trademarked, is to make sure that those cost savings are realized. And we'll talk about that in a second. From the utility perspective, the way this works is that the utility makes the capital investment. So they ultimately do temporarily own the upgrade at the house, whether it's through energy efficiency measures, new water heaters, solar. And over time, it's paid back until that cost recovery is complete. And then ownership of that asset is transferred over fully to the customer. The utility works with a third-party program operator to facilitate working with contractors who will be paid for the services and materials. And so again, that contractor works with the program operator, and with the bill language that we're pursuing, that those contractors would be certified with the Colorado Energy Office, similar to the PACE program. And so that contractor then goes on site, installs the upgrades, and that capital investment is paid over time through cost recovery. The utility is able to source this capital through a variety of means. There's a lot of grants out there. Some of them have been utilized in Colorado. The Rural Energy Savings Program has a 0% interest. Energy Efficiency Conservation Loan Program can also provide funding for these different utilities. But also, utilities are able to do a standard bond issuance. And our proposed legislation will ensure inclusion of Colorado's clean energy financial institutions because we want to make sure that they are prioritized for this process. Now, in terms of the customer experience, I think this quote really highlights just how simple this can be. We want to lower your energy bills and upgrade your house with no out of pocket payment or risk to you. And that's a pretty enticing offer for a lot of people. And so the way this works is that the customer schedules free energy assessment. And the way our bill is designed is it will focus on supporting low to moderate income households via census tract first. And so those communities will be able to get those assessments first. And then that program operator will be able to come to the house and do an assessment. They'll first look and do some immediate upgrades, such as replacing lights with LEDs, updating low flow fixtures, and other small improvements. And they also develop a scope of work for larger improvements that will save money. And so that can be weatherization, going solar, installing demand response technologies, and other technologies as well. Then, once all those upgrades are complete, the customer is able to then lower the bill through a new rate tariff that incorporates that payback, and then they're going to have increased comfort. And again, there is no customer loan, lien, or debt. There's no out-of-pocket cost. There's no credit or income check. And then ultimately, they're going to save more than what they pay on their bill originally. Now, I mentioned that there is some restrictions within Pay As You Save to make it work. These are the consumer protections known as, for energy efficiency, the 80% rule. And that 80% rule is the assurance of net savings via this tariff on bill investment. So the way the 80% rule works is that the investment must recover its cost within 80% of their useful life. So to see the bond there, that's how many years there. And then the investment also must use no more than 80% of the estimated average savings for program charges, and that's the vertical axis there. So the total savings are represented by the entire green and blue areas. 2/3 of the savings, the blue area, is used to pay for the upgrades. The customer at the location gets the rest, the green area, those savings, as average net savings per year. They also get any additional savings if the upgrades continue to function beyond their estimated life. So from the customer perspective, the 80% rule means from the start, the savings will exceed the cost of their charges by at least 25%. After the utility cost recovery is complete and payments end after those, say it's a 10-year improvement after 8 years, the customer at the location gets 100% of any remaining savings. And again, they will fully own that improvement. So PAYS is a market-driven program, and customers need a significant incentive to participate. Getting a significant portion of the savings from the start has proven to be sufficient to get more than half the customers who receive an offer to say yes. From the utility's perspective, having the duration of charges limited to only 80% of the estimated useful life of the upgrades increases the likelihood that they will be able to recover all of the program service charges well before the upgrades may need to be repaired or replaced. All right, this is wonky. What does this actually look like for the customer? So here's a quick example of what this can look like. So someone gets just a water heater, efficient water heater upgrade, and let's just say it costs $1,000. The estimated life of that water heater is 10 years. And the estimated savings is about $14.66 a month. So for the 80% rule of PAYS, that investment of $1,000 needs to be paid back over 8 years. And for the utilities role in providing this capital and providing the utility operation of the program, they're allowed up to 3% amortization amount. And that's the maximum that our legislation allows. Other utilities could have less as well. And so ultimately, the amount that they pay off the loan with per month would be $11.73 as part of their tariff charge. And so the customer ultimately is going to immediately see about $3 of savings in their monthly bill. And then after 8 years, they'll be able to realize even more savings month to month until the lifetime of the system, the lifetime of the water heater, they're going to be able to save over $630. It's also noteworthy for certain improvements. Let's just say if the customer wants to get a water heater that's maybe a little more expensive, maybe has different features that they want, and it costs $1,200. To make the pay-as-you-save model and the 80% rule work, they would have to pay a copay of $200 in this case to make that 80% rule work. And so that's an important consideration within pay-as-you-save, is that savings have to be realized. And that's, again, why that's a limit of this program, but it's also the opportunity that it brings. Now, there are other improvements that will have different rules. And for example, like the ability to predict the cost recovery for a solar system is more precise. And therefore, an 87% rule was determined appropriate. And there's a study that actually came out last summer that you were able to read through and learn more about. And that 87% rule is based on a projection of the system performance by the end of the cost recovery after 20 years. The utility would lock in also the net metering rate within the tariff during that time to make sure that the payoff remains secure. We also know that, especially in Colorado, there's lots of conversations about a lot of cool technologies that are going to change the energy system. And so we really want to leave the door open for demonstrated cost savings improvements, such as looking at beneficial electrification, battery storage, and other demand side management technologies. Ultimately, the Public Utilities Commission is going to have to evaluate through evolving market forces and smart grid services, incentives, or even grants from state and local communities. Do these numbers pan out to be successful within the PAYS program? And we're excited because we think, again, this could open up a lot of new opportunities. I'll spend just a couple minutes to differentiate of how PAYS is different from on-bill loans, even PACE program, because I know there's a lot of questions that usually come out for that. First, bottom line, PAYS is not a loan. Pay as you save evaluates the savings opportunity of the location, considering the structure and usage history. It's tied to the meter, meaning even renters could take advantage of it. And it's really available to all utility customers with no split incentive. PAYS can automatically transfer with notice in terms of new ownership. And there is disconnection for non-payment for successful customers. But because ultimately this model results in savings, there is a very low loss rate that we're seeing in PAYS implementation programs across the country. Loans, on the other hand, it's all about the person's credit, income, and assets. It's tied to the property owner. It's only available to the property owners. It's not transferable generally. And non-payment triggers a full write-down of unrecovered funds. And that can have as much as a 3 to 5% loss rate. And then as we talk about a comparison of pay as you save to on-bill loans and property assessed clean energy, which is called PACE. As you can see here, what the differences are in terms of eligibility and ultimately the difference when it comes into the property assessed clean energy is that essentially that's a lien on your property and it's a loan that you pay through your property taxes. So there's a lot of similarities with the on-bill loan versus, again, the structure of pay as you save. And because of this increased accessibility of the Pay As You Save program, we're seeing across the country higher levels of adoption. So as you can see here, there are customer eligibility rates go up to 100% because pretty much everyone's eligible. The amount of people that are accepting offers is nearly 8 times higher than before with loans. The deal size is upwards twice as much because more can be done because more can be tied into the meter. And then the default rate is 10 times lower at just 0.1% because, again, people are saving through this program. So put it all together, a person that has a pay as you save option available is 32 times more likely to close on that deal with pay as you save versus a loan. And it's because of all of these benefits that can tie together. Pay as you save has been growing. It's been around for about 20 years, and it is, especially in recent years, there's been a lot of interest. To our neighbors to the east in Kansas, Midwest Energy has had a pay as you save model going for a little while now. And we're even just for Colorado, as we've been developing this legislation, we have had inquiries from the Washington and Pennsylvania state legislatures, as well as other cities that are very excited about what this might mean for their own locations. So we're excited to play a part in this growing conversation across the country. And I won't go through this line by line, but as you can see, here are some of the real results that pay as you save programs have had in various utilities across the country. As you can see, they've been reaching a variety of levels of customers with acceptance rates as high as 70 to 90%. The upgrade average cost is anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000. So making tangible investments, creating jobs, being able to have people live more comfortably. And this all results in annual savings for the customer so far on average between $600 to $700. And that's at rates of 10 to 13 cents per kilowatt hour charged on the tariff. It's also worth noting that the charge-offs and disconnections are almost nil. Like we're seeing very low rates, especially compared to what the utilities normally see. So there's a couple of key provisions I wanted to highlight that we've been working on with this legislation. And I'll talk more about where we are in that process in just a minute in terms of the legislative process. First, equity. So the first 60% of the annual program funding, we're requiring that to be invested in census tract low-income communities before the remaining 40% is available to the market. This is actually the first time that this has been done in a pay-as-you-save model, and we believe this is important to really incentivize the market to serve those in need. And as I mentioned, this is available to renters that are able to take advantage of this. And we are writing language to say that community solar is included for qualifying for pays. So that way it's still attached to the property, but they could own those shares in the community solar project and qualify that way. There's also consumer industry safeguards that we're making sure are included. And this is after a lot of conversations with a variety of stakeholders. First, third-party program operator is going to be facilitating the program, not the utility. And that's important not only to protect customers, but as well as installers. We want to make sure that the market is fair to them. And speaking of which, the Colorado Energy Office certifies those contractors, and we expect it to be similar to the Property Assessed Clean Energy approval process that is already in existence. There's other considerations as well in terms of this being a mandate for investor-owned utilities. And as of now, there's no requirements for electric co-ops or municipal utilities. There is frankly nothing stopping them from implementing the program. And we have seen some of the utilities like Mountain Parks Electric, as well as Holy Cross, look into pay-as-you-save models and implement on-bill tariff financing. There's also, we've had a lively dialogue around the requirements for beneficial electrification, making sure that improvements are not using fossil fuels. And frankly, that's something that we're working through the politics with still. And it's a challenge that I think is important to take on. And finally, we also know that we're deploying a proven model that works, it's proven, it's happening across the country, versus creating a study bill where this is something that's going to go through the regulatory process that might take multiple years to complete. We certainly believe through the work that we've been doing that as we look at the recovery of COVID and opportunities to address climate change and economic and energy justice, we think that now's the time for us to move forward on this. So in terms of the potential annual impacts, we believe that there could be upward of $350 million of investment per year as we reach up to 2% saturation of the market every year. You can see the math on the right side, but again, we expect around $200 million of energy efficiency improvements and upwards of $147 million in solar improvements or solar installations. We expect this to create upward of 40,000 jobs and likely around 49 megawatts of solar installed per year. And again, that's like taking 12,000 cars off the road every year. And this is just based on the investor-owned utility numbers. As you can see, put together between Xcel and Black Hills, there's about 1.5 million residential meters. And if we just did 2% of upgrades at those locations, you can see how that those numbers pan out. And then of those upgrades, just 1/3 of them being able to go solar, we did a rough estimate of what those numbers would be. Now, we know that these numbers are probably not perfect. And ultimately, this is something where even if a fraction of these numbers can be realized, we still believe, obviously, it's going to be a huge impact for the state. So again, we're continuing to do assessment and number crunch, but we're excited to see these preliminary numbers and what they can mean for the state. Also, it's worth acknowledging that the implementation timeline can go fairly quick, and we've seen this happen in some utilities. Essentially, once the tariff is approved, so whether through statute or the Public Utilities Commission, it takes several months to be able to solicit guidance from PAYS program operator or other utilities that have implemented this program, provide the financial analysis and submit the model, and then ultimately securing those funds, and then starting to deploy the program within, again, as little as 5 to 6 months. This obviously varies, but it's just worth saying that, there's a lot of information out there that's ready to get this program implemented fairly quickly. Talk about the legislative update of where we are right now. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Bryce. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on.
Sure. Thanks so much for the time. And As you mentioned, I'm working with Saul Malik. Him and I have been partnering down at the Capitol for about a decade now, working on a variety of clean and renewable energy issues. And we are excited to represent your interests down at the Capitol on this. And I'm fairly new to the team, and so getting up to speed myself. So, um, but I'll let you kind of take it away on where you're at so far. But we're here to support your efforts. And when the legislature comes back on February the 16th from their kind of brief COVID recess, they were in for 3 days from January 13th to January 15th to pass, to get all the new legislators and returning legislators sworn back in. And then they passed 7 bills that were kind of COVID cleanups and bills making some adjustments to some of the bills passed in the special session in 2020. But basically took a break from the 15th to February the 16th, when we've continued to see the COVID numbers go down, and enables them a little more time for implementations of safe hearing, remote hearing, and processes for the legislators and the members of the general public, and surely the members of our team as we're working on this bill, and getting ready to lobby the members on this topic. And so we're kind of in that donut hole time wise on that, but excited to get them back in the building here in a week and a half or so, and get to work on this thing.
Perfect. Thank you, Brett. And that's exactly right. We are looking at the next 2 waves. There's some cleanup from bills from last year, and then there will be new bills introduced. And we are working with Representative Alex Valdez as well as Senator Chris Hansen on this bill. We're working to get in front of a drafter to make sure that this language goes from a very detailed outline into actual statute that we're able to then have a new round of sharing with stakeholders for additional feedback. So still lots of work ahead in the coming weeks, but we're excited to be at this position and really elevate the dialogue around this important opportunity for Colorado. And again, we're really appreciative of Sol and Brett for their support as we move forward with this legislation. So I'll wrap up with just a couple ways to get involved, and maybe Brett, you can also talk a little bit about this on the legislative side once I round this up. So some quick ways are certainly you can sign the petition if you haven't done so already at our website, which is coloradopays.org, Pays.org. Writing letters to the editor, you can write a call to your representative. We plan to have a virtual lobby day. We're still figuring out the date and logistics of that, but we're excited to move forward with that. Also, if you are with a variety of volunteers in a district, we are happy to coordinate with you to set a virtual meeting with your representative. And ultimately, it comes down to just helping spread the word to partners and other community groups. Really, this is intended to be inclusive of all communities, and having everyone's support in that is going to ensure we're successful. And finally, we want to lift up important voices. We know there are a lot of people that could really benefit from this model, and we want to make sure that their voices are heard either directly or through profiles of video and other work. So certainly that is something that we would love your help in identifying those folks.
Yeah, as we get a bill moving through the process, there's certainly going to be, every bill that passes through the Colorado legislature at minimum is going to get one committee of reference hearing on the House side, one on the Senate side, and probably an appropriations and finance committee hearing as well. So there's going to be, every bill goes through a minimum of seven steps. That's 3 in each chamber, and 1 from the governor's office, if not more. So lots of opportunities to weigh in with your legislators. For those of you on the phone that may be interested in helping pass this bill, I think educating on the difference between this and kind of the PACE and some of the other loan programs that are out there, I think is going to be really important. I can already hear people saying, well, don't we already do this? And so just being able to provide the education on how this is a new improved model of some of the things that have been tried in the past, I think is really important. So some of you that are in the industry and on the ground, on the call, having your voices in committee hearings, through testimony, through direct contact with legislators, that's going to be very important to help us educate folks and keep this thing moving.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. And again, we are looking, if anybody's interested to be on a volunteer team, we're going to be able to plug you in and get involvement there. Thank you for attending Solar United Neighbors webinar on Pay As You Save, which we are working to pass in Colorado legislature. You can learn more and support our effort by signing our petition on our website, www.coloradopays.org. If you'd like to get involved or have questions about the initiative, don't hesitate to reach out. This is Bryce Carter, signing off.